What is up, Jamily? This is JamiroFan 2000 here with yet another episode of JamiroFan Talks About, where I take a discussionary look to the past, present, and future of JamiroQuai, and now they're over 28 years of making music. In this episode, I thought I'd talk about the marketing of JamiroQuai and the stark differences that have come with promoting JamiroQuai's music from the past to the present now. And as I touched on in several of my videos in the past here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel, the environment for promoting music basic promotions of music has dramatically changed over the last probably 20 to 30 years since JamiroQuai started making music back in 1992 into 93 after leaving Acid Jazz Records and signing with Sony Music for an 8-album deal. Back in the early days of the Jamly, or the early days of the Jamly, back when it was known as the Tribe with a Vibe, or the what the early connotation for the JamiroQuai fan base was back then, promoting music was still done in a very relative basic sense, where it was mostly radio and it was mostly internet word of mouth. The internet fully didn't form until probably the beginning of the 21st century, around the year 2000s, when the internet really started kicking into steam. But the promotion of music, at least up to the beginning of the 2000s, was basically the same. It was radio, it was MTV, and that was how you promoted music. The internet these days is like the most important advertising device that they are out there now. But back in the early days, the Jamly really did help out JamiroQuai, and the word of mouth, at least till before JamiroQuai started developing a fan club, and then doing promotions directly on the internet by creating a website. Because JamiroQuai's web presence, at least online when it came to promoting their music, didn't really emerge until Traveling Without Moving in 1996-97. Back then, the internet was a bit of a dust bowl in creativity, but JamiroQuai, under Sony Records, did develop a first official site, and then video on internet video became prevalent, and then audio became prevalent. But the Jamly really did step in, filling that promotion gap for JamiroQuai with a bunch of fans like my friend David, who did the Funkin' site, and the other David, who did the French Iroquois site. It became an amazing ecosystem online of fan sites and post forums that encapsulated the early online Jamly. And with that community, that fan base and that community, it really did fill and help out JamiroQuai greatly in the promotion and the education of their music, and all the news that was happening with JamiroQuai and the promotions of the music. And then when it came to the promotions of JamiroQuai and their peak period of probably the most money spent by a record label in promoting JamiroQuai was definitely around 1999 with Synchronized, when JamiroQuai was trying to, or the record label was trying to repeat the 11 million album selling, record-breaking album success here in the United States with 1996 Traveling Without Moving, with the follow-up 1999 Synchronized. But ultimately that album would be, lightning didn't strike twice for JamiroQuai in that album. But moving on to back to the topic at hand, once the 2000s came in, JamiroQuai's online identity started to take a lot of shape. The official website that they had created started to change. It started to incorporating flash graphics and CSS and all kinds of emerging technologies for the online promotion of music. And then, of course, in the early 2000s, we saw the advent of music streaming. Music streaming became one of the major conduits for music discovery and music promotion, and ultimately it would start out, music streaming, at least online, would start out as radio stations, and we had sites like Pandora and I Love Music popping up here and there, basically getting the proverbial ball rolling for music streaming. But in the early days of music streaming, it was all based around radio station type of format. But then eventually, with the advent of Spotify, and then all these licensing deals with all the record labels, then all the music became available for a relatively cheap subscription price, or in the case of Spotify, a very, very very cool free application. But that, with the advent of the internet becoming the mainstay of all of the promotions of everything on the internet, or at least in the world at large, radio became less significant, MTV became less significant, because of video streaming and video sharing online exploded in the 2000s. So what used to be the old media way of promoting music had to change with the times. So the promotions of music still became more word of mouth, and became the Jami did really step up again and help promote JamiroQuai's music. But ultimately, the Jami did develop a lot of good fan sites, a lot of good post forums, and did help keep promoting JamiroQuai when the band couldn't promote everywhere that they used to. And of course, ultimately, JamiroQuai would see a big change in 2006 when they left Sony Music to go sign with Universal Music. And then the first album that they did with Universal Music was a bit of a concept album, a live band album, of course, with Rock This Lightstar in 2011, and that was poorly promoted and not poorly received, but I do think it could have been promoted much better, and I've talked about that in previous videos here on my channel. But ultimately, the internet would step in, and the promotions would be mostly word of mouth. And then, of course, we come to today, where music is primarily a vehicle of music streaming. And JamiroQuai's music has not changed. It's only gotten better and better with every passing album. And the promotions of Automaton have really turned into a group effort now, where back in the old days it was all about A&R, and it was all about radio, and it was all about MTV, and it was all about live concerts and all that. Now it's really changed, dramatically changed, to now it's no more of that old media. Now it's all online social media driven campaigns and live concerts and social media driven content that drives the reception to whatever's happening with your favorite artist now, and it's completely changed. And you can't really make the argument if it's the worse or for the better. It's really you gotta take it with whatever you want to take with when it comes to in the sense of promoting albums. I do think that social media is an important tool to promoting music of whatever artist that you really, really gravitate to. But back in the early days, you had two places that you would promote something, and that would be MTV and, of course, A&R and radio. But now that promotions device is now fragmented, and I have talked about this in previous videos here on my channel, that now promotions is even harder to do, because you have to do it on multiple social media platforms at the same time to get the full reception or the full exposure to the majority of the internet users that are music fans, and letting them know what's happening. And it's much, much harder to promote music now, but when you promote it right, you can garner a big fan base, and you can garner a lot of attention, and everybody can come and discover JamiroQuai or get their news for JamiroQuai. And when you do a multi-pronged approach, like they did with like Virgin EMI, Universal Music, and JamiroQuai did with 2017's Automaton, then you can get amazing success and amazing reception and amazing response. And I do think JamiroQuai is reaching an amazing point of great promoting of their music. And Virgin EMI finally gave JamiroQuai, after them signing with Universal Music, gave them the proper promotions that they deserved. And I'm very, very happy that multiple fronts are helping promote JamiroQuai. It's not only the record label, it's the fan base. And when you have a strong fan base, anything's possible. Anything's possible for the artist, for the fans, for the live experience, and for the music getting out to more and more people that have never heard JamiroQuai before and can discover them in their own time. I hope you enjoyed this JamiroFan Talks About. I know it's a bit of a deep dive episode, but this was another one of those questions that popped in my head the other day, and I felt like recording an episode of JamiroFan Talks About to try to verbally flesh it out. I hope you enjoyed this episode of JamiroFan Talks About. Be sure to check out all the other JamiroFan Talks About episodes here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel. There is a playlist here on my channel, so be sure to check that. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell on your YouTube page to keep up to date with all the latest notifications of new content here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel. Much more content to come here on my channel. And of course, JamiroQuai will be finishing up their 2019 tour from the middle to the end of July, and of course a gig at the BEMNet Festival in November of 2019, and then they're done for the year, and hopefully album 9 will be starting to get in production very soon into 2020. And as always, this is JamiroFan 2000. He'll see you again really soon with another JamiroFan Talks About, many more JamiroQuai Minute episodes, and much more content here on the JamiroFan 2000 YouTube channel. Bye bye everybody.